Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'm the director of the Neuburger Museum of Art. And I'm so glad you're all here. I want to welcome all of you and all of those who are live streaming this event tonight. Students, faculty, staff, friends, board members, past and present, dedicated supporters, our volunteer museum educators, and our museum members. All this year, we have been celebrating our 50th anniversary, and tonight is no exception. Tonight, in fact, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the first Yaseen Lectures on the Fine Arts, our signature lecture program, which began in 1974. The lecture series was endowed by the late Helen and Leonard Yaseen, who were founding members of the Board of the Friends of the Neuburger Museum of Art. The endowment is stewarded by New York Community Trust, which is a wonderful partner to the Neuburger Museum of Art. We are so grateful to them. The legacy of the Yaseens gift continues generationally today through the support of Roger Yaseen, who has made an additional contribution to Helen and Leonard's fund at New York Community Trust on the occasion of the museum's 50th anniversary. We are so grateful to the Yaseen family for all that they have done for the museum, and especially glad that we have a couple of family members in the audience tonight, Allison and Grant. Just want to recognize you. Just give a little, thank you. And Helen and Leonard were your great-grandparents, right? Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. The Yaseen Lectures on the Fine Arts bring acclaimed scholars and artists to the Neuburger and to Purchase College to discuss their work as it relates to contemporary issues and ideas. Some of our speakers from the past include Robert Hughes, Isaac Asimov, Arthur Schlesinger, John Cage, Philip Glass, Maya Angelou, Susan Sontag, guys are in really good company, Gordon Parks, Claes Oldenburg, Faith Ringgold, and our own Purchase College alum, Fred Wilson. I would like to thank the staff of the Neuburger who has worked so hard to make this program possible. I'd especially like to thank Diana Puglisi, Curator of Education, for imagining this program and for putting it in place. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Diana, who will introduce the event and our speakers.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. This year, I've had the honor to put together the Yaseen Lecture on the Fine Arts on Feminism and Body Freedom. I'm thrilled to introduce three groundbreaking figures in the art world. Emily McElwreath, a Purchase College alumni, graduated with her master's degree in art history in 2005. Emily is an advisor, independent curator, art educator, and brand consultant. She's the founder of McElwreath Art Advisory and host and CEO of the Art Career podcast. During the course of her 18-plus year career, Emily has curated and organized programs, lectures, and panels featuring renowned artists at universities and leading New York City venues, including lecturing at Sotheby's Education. She has worked on major exhibitions with artists such as Andy Warhol, Julian Schnabel, and Karen Kalimnik at the Brandt Foundation, and has lectured at prestigious institutions such as the Whitney and the Met. Recently, Emily curated several exhibitions with prominent emerging artists, and she remains dedicated to building relationships between artists, collectors, and the broader art community. Jasmine Wahi is the founder and co-director of Project for Empty Space, a nonprofit in New York and Newark, New Jersey. Her multifaceted curatorial practice predominantly focuses on issues of femme empowerment, complicating binary structures within social discourses and exploring multi-positional cultural identities through the lens of intersectional feminism. In 2023, Jasmine was recognized by the Met for her exceptional impact in the arts. She served as the inaugural Holly Block Social Justice Curator at the Bronx Museum. Marilyn Minter is an acclaimed American artist living and working in New York City, whose work has been the subject of numerous solo exhibitions and has been included in group exhibitions in museums all over the world. She creates photographs, paintings, and videos that offer nuanced representations of women. Well known for her meticulous technical mastery, Minter's details often highlight natural, corporeal qualities that are omitted in mass media depictions of women, such as body hair and stretch marks, which she deems not only authentic, but also beautiful. Each of these women brings a unique voice and vision to the table. They don't just work in the art world, they redefined it. Please join me in welcoming Emily, Jasmine, and Marilyn. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As an alum of Purchase College, I am especially honored to be moderating this panel tonight. Diana, thank you so much. It's been lovely working with you. And Tracy, wherever you are, thank you for having me. The topics we are going to be exploring, feminism and body freedom, are both timely and deeply significant, encouraging us to reflect on the intersection of art and activism. Last week, Donald Trump was elected President of the United States, a decision that feels like a profound step back for women's rights and body autonomy. As we gather here today to discuss these topics, the urgency of this conversation has only heightened. This is no longer an abstract discussion. It's a call to action in a world in which our rights and freedoms are being questioned and in many cases, as we know, actively threatened. For those who chose to support a candidate whose policies directly undermine body autonomy and women's rights, I can only hope today's discussion opens your eyes to the impact of those choices. This is no longer a political stance, as we know. This is a matter of respecting each person's right to their own body and freedom. With that said, I am thrilled to introduce our distinguished panelists, colleagues, and friends, Jasmine Wahi and Marilyn Minter. Together, these two trailblazers have reshaped the landscape of feminist art, for sure, challenging conventional perceptions and advocating for freedom and empowerment. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
So I want to start with a question for both of you. Can you each speak to how you see activism intertwine with your artistic practice, and how do you decide when to let the art speak for itself and when to amplify it through direct advocacy?
You go first.
Okay, I was going to say the same thing to you.
Before age.
You know, I grew up in the Deep South, and I thought things were just wrong. And I saw this injustice all the time. And I saw colored drinking fountains and white drinking fountains, things like that, which drove me crazy, like 5 years old and 4 years old. And, you know, I grew up with a lot of anti-Semitism, black people, hatred of feminism. It wasn't an enlightened area at all. Shreveport, Louisiana, and then Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They were like cultural deserts. And the only thing I could do ever that was any good or better than Friends or something was to draw. So I sort of saw myself getting out of, I just wanted to go up north. I talked like this. I had a real thick Southern accent. And, but I'd never seen snow. So I just tried to get to Syracuse University and then from there to New York City. But I couldn't go directly to New York City because that was too scary. So I'm going through all of this because I've always been an activist. Mm-hmm. So when I was involved in civil rights when I was 16, and I was very mad at Martin Luther King because he switched from strictly civil rights to anti-war. And I thought, no, this is more important. And I was, I'm pretty ignorant. But I did get one magazine, the New York. I got Newsweek. I decided to get Newsweek, and that was I never saw the New York Times or anything, but. And then I went to University of Florida, and I found my tribe with the other artists, and we were always these activists, anti-war activists. It's sort of like, if you think about 1968, if you'd I went to grad school with 17 guys, and I was the only female. This is Syracuse University. If you flunked out of school, you were drafted. That's what it was like. It was like, cities were burning, and leaders were getting assassinated. So it feels like this is the worst time in your life, but we've lived through really bad times. And my husband, who was also an activist, says it was worse then. I'm not sure, because for him it was going to Vietnam. For me it was bodily autonomy. So I felt like maybe that feels the same with young girls as opposed to young men, even though, we were from two different schools, and we were protesting in 1971 in Washington, D.C., the Vietnam War. So, and it was a real shock when McGovern lost, just like right now, how you feel. And I was thinking, I never, ever said I'm going to make activist art, ever. I just make my art, and there's threads of activism through everything. It's really a totally non-intellectual practice, and all my life, I've made something, and then someone really smart comes in and tells me what I just did, and I just oh, I heard Colin Carter say, well, you work with the pathology of glamour, and I went, yes, I work with the pathology of glamour. And I see what critics say, and I say, yes, this is what I'm doing. So I don't know, it's not a linear progression. I have no choice. It's not like, oh yes, now I'm going to make something that is the personification of this idea. That just does not happen. It looks like an illustration then. I just make my work, and there are artists that make everything they do is political. Willis Thomas, Carol Walker, Barbara Kruger. These are political artists. I'm not that. I'm an artist who happens to also be an activist, and I was always an activist, and I just happened to get famous as an artist. So it was not any kind of progression. Okay. That was my experience. How about you? I've quoted her talking about me, because she's way smarter than I am.
I don't know about that, but remind me of your original question.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much, how do you decide when to let the art speak for itself and when to amplify it through direct advocacy, but also just tell us about you and who you are. We don't need to stick to any script here.
So, well, I think it's an interesting question, because as a person who's not an artist, I think that my role as a curator or cultural practitioner is to always amplify the artwork and let it speak to the topic that it's speaking to. And so for me as a curator, I think I work in specific themes, and then that are either responsive or reactive, depending on where you're sitting. And I bring in artists who can articulate that better than I could in words. And so, therefore, I think my work is always in deference to the art, which is in deference to a larger social movement or social impact. And, you know, I think it's just something that is now a compulsion for me rather than a choice. I think maybe one day I'll have the luxury of, I don't know, curating plein air paintings or something in a different world that doesn't necessarily need this type of work. But I also am perhaps naively of this really genuine belief that whether or not people realize it, art, particularly art that is intentionally socially oriented, actually makes a difference. And often it is taken for granted because people, that's sort of the magic of it, is it sort of by osmosis percolates into our society and dictates not only, or it reflects not only as what's happening, but can have the power to dictate what's to come. And so I think that's sort of ingrained in my ethos as a curator. So basically the short answer is I can't turn it off.
You can't turn, and you don't turn it off.
I don't turn it off.
I've never met anyone. Have you met anyone
Don't turn it
that
off.
does as much as Jasmine? Okay, so before we talk about body freedom for everybody, which we obviously are going to cover, I want to talk about your relationship, and can you tell us a little bit about abortion is normal? And also, when did you two meet, and how long have you been friends?
So
We were same faculty.
we were same faculty
We
at
met in
SEA.
the lounge.
Yes.
Yeah.
We met in the lounge or maybe on the subway
Well,
or at
then
an
we
opening.
saw each other on the subway. We were on our way to a dinner for Lorna Simpson.
Yeah.
And we started talking about what we were interested in. And then we ended up staying at that dinner and talking some more. And then she already knew I was working with Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Because I had raised like $3 million at a Sotheby auction.
Yeah.
And then, but the TARP laws were coming, targeted, I don't know what it means, TARP, they were
Yeah.
trying to, they would say this abortion clinic has to close because the hallways are too, they're not wide enough. Or they were just looking for ways
Loophole, yeah.
loopholes to shave. And my generation fought like hell to get Roe v. Wade passed. And so I was, all of a sudden I'm listening to NPR, and when I'm painting, and I hear all these carving away at things I was taking for granted. And you felt the same thing.
Yeah, I think
And you called me up.
No, I texted you.
Texted.
Because I still have the text. And I think it was Alabama had either proposed something or was putting it up for the vote.
Yes.
And this is in the beginning or the summer of 2019. And so pre-COVID. And I texted you and I was like, can you believe this is happening? And you said, well, what the fuck are we gonna do? And I was like, well, you're an artist and I'm a curator. So what can we do except for pull together an exhibition?
And I had a group I've been working with.
Yes, you had a group, you were working with Lori Simmons.
No, Lori, I brought her in for this.
Oh, right, sorry.
I was working with Downtown for Democracy.
Yes.
Because we were fighting the Trump regime and we were doing all these, I was working for HALT, so we were picketing buildings that the Trump family lived in. And we were gonna help them move.
Yeah.
This kind of thing. We were just being assholes.
Yeah.
And trying to be a real pain in the ass.
We converted that energy, everyone does.
Well, you had already raised all of that money, and then this happened.
Then this happened.
You text Marilyn.
I texted Marilyn, and so we together gathered a cohort.
So I gathered my group.
Yeah,
Right.
your group. I brought Rebecca, who is the co-director.
A picture of Rebecca.
The co-director at Project for Empty Space with me, and a designer, a graphic designer. And we came up with this title, Abortion is Normal.
After I wanted it to be, Thank God for Abortion.
Which is a
But
pre-existing
everybody
group.
fought me.
Well, no, it's a pre-existing group, so we didn't go with that title.
But we begged her. Yeah.
We did beg her. We included her work in the show. But we decided that we needed to do an emergency exhibition. And so it was an exhibition that was conceptually constructed around reproductive freedoms, but was also a benefit exhibition.
Right.
And so I think over 5 weeks, we raised...
We knew how to recruit artists. But we made a point, Lori and I, we were not the curators because we didn't want anybody mad at us.
Lori Simmons.
Yeah, Lori Simmons. So we made her the curator.
Right. And then everyone
though
just
we
hated
begged-
you.
Yeah.
But if you vetoed some of the artists we wanted.
Yes,
yeah,
I
and
did,
yes,
'cause
it's all yours.
Because I'm a curator.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
And you did it, and it was a big deal.
We didn't want to
It
curate.
was. You know, I think at that time it seemed like a big deal, and the statement "abortion is normal" was, sort of
It
like
was shocking.
contentious and
Yeah.
shocking.
We thought it was nothing.
Well, now it all seems very quaint in the sort of post-Roe world. But that show was the origin of body freedom.
We felt it coming, especially my generation, because we had seeing nobody doing anything, and then all of a sudden they're chipping away at all of the things we took for granted. But no one would believe us almost. You know, say, why are you doing this for Planned Parenthood? Aren't they doing fine? You know?
Right.
And yeah, so it was almost like we felt it coming, but no one cared until Roe was overturned. They didn't really believe it was even going to get overturned. And so this was way ahead of that.
Yeah, no,
It was.
2019, and then COVID happened. Yeah.
So then fast forward 5, 6 years.
Math, yeah, 5.
So let's just talk a little bit about body freedom
Sure.
for everybody, because it's current right now, and
It's very current.
just assume that no one knows what it is, and please tell us what
Okay.
you're doing, because it's unbelievable.
Well, there is actually someone. Oh, sorry. There is actually someone in the audience who worked with us on this show. And Body Freedom for Everybody is an exhibition inside of a 27-foot box truck that is currently traversing the country. We started September 4th, and the truck is currently on its way to West Palm Beach as we speak, where I'm going to go meet it tomorrow morning. But the whole show is about bodily autonomy with a specific lens on reproductive freedom, queer liberation, and trans joy. And we have over 100 artists participating inside of this truck, including Marilyn, and a number of other people who have been comrades and allies with us over the past many years. And the show actually, because there are 100 artists and it's only 27 feet, the show changes at every stop that we go to. And so we have had close to 40 different hangs so far.
But it's all the same. You're not taking anything away.
We're not taking anything away. We rotate what's inside the truck, and then at the next stop, we re-rotate it again. But the reason I mention that is not just because of the magnitude of artists, but because it's our hope to address these issues in regionally and community-specific ways. And so we have artists from all over the country, and also themes that are really specific to certain places. So when we were in Texas, we were showing certain work that wasn't necessarily applicable to what's happening in a place like New York, because we have different levels of access and freedom to different types of healthcare. But this is an ongoing project that is really rooted in this idea of celebration and joy, and living in our truth and power as a form of resistance against whatever happens around us. And so, you know, the election last week happened and the results were what they were, but Rebecca and I are very staunchly committed to this idea that it actually doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't impact our ability to move forward and our ability to persevere, basically. And so that's what we're going to continue doing with this crazy project inside of a box truck.
Literally. This is
Literally
the
inside of a
truck.
This is the truck,
Rebecca
yes.
and Jasmine standing in front of the truck. The launch was in Times Square in September. How has the experience, you've been on the road with the truck.
I have been on the road. Marilyn, you've been on the road in proxy.
Yes, I know.
You know, it has been remarkably and very pleasantly surprising that I have had an amazing time talking to people. And I've discovered that the majority of the people, and of course there's an element, I think, of self-selection with people who are going to show up at this truck, right? It's an intimidating thing. I think if unless you're showing up with like a whole group of incels, you're not really, you won't have the courage to show up. But people have been really eager to talk to us and really eager to actually engage with the artwork, participate in the participatory elements, share their stories with us. And the only sort of in-person pushback we've received has been in the past week driving to Florida, which again is mostly sort of like small appendage behavior of people in cars, like honking at the truck or like giving us the finger. And I'm like, you're in a car, I'm in a truck, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, nothing. You're gonna do
But yeah, besides that, it's been really special actually to talk to people all over the country.
I think following the discussion about abortion is normal, it's just this other project that you've taken on that's been so incredibly successful and brought so much change.
Thank you.
Marilyn, so your art has been a vehicle for challenging conventional beauty standards and reclaiming women's autonomy over their bodies. What are some ways your involvement in feminist movements have influenced your visual work, and how do you hope your work resonates with your viewers?
I always want to have a dialogue with my viewers, and I think my primary objective most of the time is to make a picture of something we all know exists. But
Who's that?
Who is that?
Oh, I don't know who that is. That's my moose, my muse. Yeah, that's our beautiful Jasmine. So it's funny because I just had a show, and these are the only 2 paintings that didn't sell.
They're for sale, I'm for sale.
And you always say that about your...
They're put together. I wonder why. Yeah. Anyway, what was I? They were in my studio. That's from. Yeah. Okay. So I just, like if you think about it, I just make a picture that you know about. Like when you pull down your socks, you'll see lines in your legs. So I make a picture of that. Or if you have fancy shoes and you dance all night, your feet get dirty. Or you take your bra off, there'll be lines in the back, on your back. So these are things we all know, and I just push it a little further. I'm trying to get rid of shame about the human body and about the shame that's put on women constantly. And so if I make a picture of it, it's like telling on yourself, and it relieves, and I think, shame is what's killing us all, men and women.
Tell us about this series. Hold on.
These are my heroes.
This series.
This series.
Oh, the series.
Elder
Oh, yeah,
sex.
there's a perfect example. We have so much contempt for old people that have sex. Ugh. Just, it's so hideous. I just shot Jane Fonda for a portrait, and she said, I like everything you do, but I hate these old people. I don't want to see old bodies. If I'm going to have an affair, I want a 20-year-old. And, she's really magnified because she's 10 years older than me, and she was one of my heroes. And I know I know where she's coming from. And so the New York Times asked me to, because things are so different now, being old. Like people are really active in their 70s, 80s, 90s. They work out. They've never been this healthy old. And this woman, Maggie Jones, did a story in the New York Times Magazine about people having sex all the way up until they die, which everyone thought was just hideous, right? And but it's real. And so they asked me to shoot it because I'm an old lady. So they figured I know how to shoot old people.
That's why they asked you, Marilyn.
They just went and found an old person.
Exactly why they asked you.
I had friends, couples, I could not get them to model. So no one would do it. So I ended up there are 2 couples. One of them is Dan Colin, the artist's parents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And the other one are actors, and they're a couple. And everybody else were actors. Models didn't work at all because they had too much work done, and I wanted real people.
Right.
This woman is 89 years old. And that's my husband's hand on her boob.
Bill's really seen it all.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and so we.
So you onboarded your husband because.
Oh well, I needed a guy, know.
Right.
And she's a teacher at NYU, and she's the mother of one of the editors of the New York Times, and she was up for it, and she's always saying, sign this picture, and she's really up for it. Well, this is what's different. People are healthier, and they never had Viagra before.
Right.
And so what this article was, I said, well, we were pioneers, and I went in there saying, hey, listen, no one has ever seen pictures in all sexuality. I tried to, any kind of what you were into, I tried to get a picture of. We weren't allowed to show a lot of the pictures because it was the New York Times, it's a family magazine. So all the ones that were rejected, like they gave us 100 dildos, seriously, or vibrators, just so we could, you know, I don't know why all this lingerie. So I gave all the actors a vibrator as they left. I can't return them, you know. And I sent the editor one saying, I hope you have fun. Tonight, Kathy Ryan, the picture editor, we had such a ball doing the shoot for 5 days. But here's what's so shocking. When nobody knew this, I mean, the only thing you ever see is a fetish on new porn of old women and young guys. That's a fetish. But these are real people. And women wear bathing suits. The guys, you know, their flesh, look at her boobs. They look pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
She had a bathing suit on all the time. So they kept saying, these were people from the ages of 70 to 90. And the editors were going, too young, too young, too young. So some of the black actors, I had to make them push the skin because the only way you see age is armpits, hands, and neck. But these guys and these women looked pretty good, especially if they were people of color. They looked amazing. And we couldn't get them to look old unless I had somebody push the skin, their butt or something. This is really interesting, right?
Well, yeah, it is.
So, I mean, you wouldn't know how old she was, you know?
And I think just this experience of models, Jasmine, you can attest to this, being in your studio is a pretty joyful experience.
We had a ball doing it. We shot for a week. Different models would come in and we give them a pep talk about, we're pioneers and you get to do this. And they were really happy to do it. And
That's you.
Well, the article came out and they had more letters come in after this. People were so offended.
Really?
Yeah. There would be like 1 positive to 10 negative.
Well,
letters.
they're used to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about intersectionality. Feminism and body freedom intersect with so many other issues, as we've already discussed, including racial, gender, and economic inequality. Mm-hmm. How do you both approach this complexity in your work to ensure these interactions are recognized and addressed?
You know, I don't think about it anymore because it's just, I think, lived experience, and it's
everything you do all the time.
Yeah. I think it's who I am, and therefore it's what I do. But yeah, I think people have asked me that question. I don't really have like a good rational answer for it. It's just part of the work.
And Marilyn?
Well, you know, the trans community is part of my community now. I have an assistant who's like my brother. We've worked together over 30 years. And he has a trans son, and I have a trans assistant who, when I hired him, he was a boy, and he's, you know, gone through the whole hormonal thing in my studio. I mean, it's just...
Jay.
Yeah, Jay. It's just, you know, it's like she says, I take it for granted.
Yeah.
I went to a place to get my hair cut, and I never knew if the receptionist was a trans or not. I didn't care. You know, I thought, well, maybe this is like, you know, you sit and wonder, but it doesn't even occur as something strange.
It doesn't register.
Yeah. But I think that that's what I'm talking about, shame. Like, this is who these people are. They've always been there. I remember seeing, you know, when I was a youth, all these, they're asexual people. And they didn't have a language for it, or a name, or, you know, they didn't even know what was off. And I think, you know, they weren't just gay. And I think that's real, you know, and I watched being gay normalized. You know, at least I think, even now, even with Trump, I think, well, I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think that's where being trans is now what being gay was maybe 20 years ago. Because now there's language. Now these kids find out that, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
I think it's, and even you're talking like a 10-year span of time with the trans community. I just interviewed Alana Farrell last week and published it on the podcast today, actually. And our conversation was around how different the experience was in the trans community in just, again, the last 10 years. And
one of my friends, Jamie Nares, he transitioned at the age of 68. And she's never been fewer. I've never felt more wonderful.
And you included the trans community and the entire queer community and body freedom for everybody.
Yeah, I don't see the issues of, I don't see reproductive freedom and gender affirming freedoms and queer freedoms as mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think there are different issues that are specific to different communities, perhaps, but I think at the end of the day, we're stronger together, and the overarching idea and sort of the overarching push against various communities is the sort of root cause of that is the same.
And it's all about shaming people.
I think it's about shame and perhaps control.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think, yeah, I mean, I think
Talk a little bit more about that.
About the control idea. I mean, this is just sort of my own barstool.
We're not sociologists.
Collective psychoanalysis, but I think at the root of a lot of what's happening around us now, fascism has always been about control and hierarchies and violent hierarchies and a type of supremacy that, while it matters what those specifics are pertaining to each community, again, the overarching idea is I hold power over you and I will continue to do so for my own benefit and to your detriment. And so I think that's really what we're fighting against together, and fighting against in individualized way, but also in collective ways. I don't think the two, it's not an either or scenario, it's a both and scenario.
Yeah, I see that. And I see that, Marilyn, you continuously return to this concept of I like it, it's shame and control. And you've always talked about shame. I think you're combating shame. You've always done that within your practice.
There's guilt, and if you're guilty and you did something wrong, you can apologize and redeem yourself. But if you've been shamed, you shouldn't even be alive. And that's how, I look at these young girls in the K-pop scene in Korea that are killing themselves at 21 just through shame, slut shaming. They're not perfect. I see these 13-year-olds in Seoul getting Western eyes, and that's like, for me, it's so painful. And I think women carry around shame. If you're a young girl and if you're any artist in the audience, if you work with sexuality, you're going to get slut shamed and you're going to get real pushback. But if you're my age, I could do anything. There's that really famous picture of Robert Mapplethorpe of Louise Bourgeois holding this giant dildo, and everyone thinks, oh, she's adorable. But if she was 25, what would the reaction be then? What's that all about? I wish people would start writing about that.
Well, in your journey, you've been making artwork always, right? So what has your shame journey been?
I had that happen to me because I did hardcore porn in 1989. And that was when, it was like this nascent group of pro-sex feminists, third wave. I think I was the only heterosexual because the gay guys and the lesbians were starting to make magazines for their own pleasure and amusement. And I was saying, well, you know, nobody has politically correct fantasies, am I right? And it's time for women to make images for their own pleasure and amusement. There was this really nascent group, Candida Royale and Susie Bright, that were trying to make images that spoke to women's desires. And I think that still is so frightening if you're young and beautiful and trying to own sexual agency. And I was like asking questions like, so what happened, this is like when this is the weirdest thing, because I was doing clinic defense and things like, and I was called a traitor to feminism because of fear, because of the first and second wave feminism were against pornography. I was saying, but we can make our own images for our own pleasure. And that was sort of, I did it because I thought everyone thought like I did. And I was really canceled. So I always say now, you know, I have all the street cred because I was canceled, thrown out of shows, we got, so, you know, bad letters, you know, and so
it
I
was that intense.
Oh God, yeah. This was, you know, my friends would come into my studio and say, I'm a feminist. And I knew it was coming from fear.
Yeah.
You know, so I wasn't even angry about it. I just knew it was coming from fear of having that power. The power it's so powerful, sexual power. And I always wondered, what is the fear, you know? And like religions are all about policing women's bodies, every one of them. It's all about policing women, policing women's bodies. And they do it through shame. And that is what I've been fighting, basically.
Always. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your friendship. Marilyn, you said to me, when was the last time we saw each other? You said that Jasmine was one of your favorite models.
Oh, she is. I've made so,
I mean, you
I've
said
made
it
so
like,
much money on this girl.
and what was that experience like, being in Marilyn Minter's studio? And
Painful. She makes you sit forever in one position.
Really?
I'm just kidding.
It's true.
No, it is true. It's true.
It's true. They're really
But fun.
lousy.
It's
no
fun.
Let me pull this image up again, if you don't mind. Oh, that's
That's
Sure.
Gloria, and that's Gaga, and that's
light gun.
Yeah, Glenn. Glenn
I did
Ligon.
their portraits, and that's Roxanne Gay.
Roxanne Gay.
I know. It's so nice to be next to her.
Isn't she a beauty?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want my odalesques. Because there's a whole history of odalesques, on art history. I wanted mine to have agency. And so I painted, I'm painting Lizzo now, talking on the phone and looking out at you over her phone. And I'm painting Padma Lakshmi eating an orange. So they're still odalesques, but they're not just sitting there for you only. There's nothing wrong with tits and ass. I don't have any problems with that. But my tits and ass models have agency. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about agency, and there's so much agency in
Yeah.
your portrait.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, on this topic of shame, I guess it's something that does become very deeply ingrained at a societal level, at an individual level. But I also think, you know, it sounds so rudimentary and sort of flippant, but it's like we're all born naked. We're all naked under our clothes, every single one of us in this audience. And at a certain point, I think it's, you know, it's fine to have things that you dislike about yourself, but at the end of the day, you only got one body. Why not enjoy it while you have it?
Why not have Marilyn Minter?
Yeah, why not have
Well,
Marilyn
I think
Minter
your shame
paint you and-
disappears the older you get.
You do?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Say, fuck this. I'm not going to let this kill me anymore.
Are you feeling that as we get older?
Well, you're 12 years old. So I've known her since she was 29. Yeah.
You know, I think there are things that I would change about myself.
Yeah.
but that's sort of like there are things that I would change about myself intellectually and emotionally too.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think having been painted by Marilyn, and of all the people who have painted me, Marilyn's my favorite and also the most famous. So I think that helps on a journey of self-validation or validation by other people.
You got to do whatever you can. I don't get mad at anybody for doing anything to make themselves feel better.
You mean getting work done and
Exactly.
get whatever it is?
Yeah.
Right, do what makes you happy.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
It's just too hard being alive. It really is. And no one escapes.
Yeah.
No one. Everyone has some crisis sooner or later. And so we have to, I don't know, like support each other all the time.
Well, as women, we have to really support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was something that I had asked both of you about. I want to just kind of tap into some personal stories before we go to audience engagement. Diana, I don't know where we are with time. Great, perfect. Moments that have shaped your perspectives on body freedom and feminism.
You want to go first?
I think it was reading a book about, what was it called? It was like, because I was that early feminist of you making fun of guys who said they read Playboy for the articles, you know? And I thought Playboy sucked, you know? And then I started, you know, I was looking, because Playboy in Florida was like the only liberal magazine. You know, it was like, it was anti-war.
You're talking about the 60s.
Yeah, the 60s.
Yeah.
It had articles with Pablo Picasso. I have a Playboy that's Pablo Picasso, James Baldwin, and Ernest Hemingway. And the naked girl was a topless girl. That was the naked girl. And they were anti-war, they were pro-integration, all the things I believed in. And then feminism came along and started, you know, saying, well, we could share this power, you know. And then they lost their minds. So I watched that, you know. And then when I used to see you don't see it at all anymore, but I used to see people having these articles, they would stand on the street corners against pornography. And there were women against pornography. Then I watched Catherine McKinnon and Andrew Dworkin try to outlaw all sexual imagery, including our bodies ourselves, trying to outlaw it with the Supreme Court. And I realized I like to look at sexy pictures. It turned me on. I like reading a porn. I like getting turned on by this stuff. I don't want it to get banned. And that's when I said, no, I'm not going to go there. That you can still have autonomy and be a sexual being at the same time, and a sexual object, because what people get turned on by is being desired. That's the biggest turn on.
Yeah, the realization that you can have both.
Yes.
Both things can
Yeah.
exist simultaneously.
Yeah, and it doesn't take anything away from anybody.
Yeah.
So, but it just didn't make sense anymore. That's what I thought, this is crazy. You know, you just can't, people love sex. They're never going to be able to outlaw it or pictures of it or stories about it.
That was your turning point.
That was my turning point.
That was your turning point.
Yeah. And remember, I used to make fun of people that read Playboy.
Yeah. We talk more about this on, Marilyn was my first guest on the podcast.
Oh, I didn't know
actually.
that. You're
Yeah.
first.
Number one, yep. You championed me and, yeah, launched my podcast. And we talk a lot
always
about,
champion women that
you are the
try and
best.
do things.
You really, yeah.
We all should, because we're so, you know, conditioned to compete with each other. And if you know it, then you don't have to participate in it.
And there really is enough for all of us.
Yeah. Well, here's what I say to artists that I think are really good. First of all, when I see a really good new artist coming along, I want them to die. And I say, well, I don't want this poison, you know, they're really good. So I make myself go over there and I make my mouth say, I love your work, you're a terrific artist. And the poison drains. The minute I do it, the poison drains.
What, because you forced yourself?
Because it's so strange.
Exercise the poison out of her.
Because artists are we are soul-suckingly self-involved.
Yes.
And we are so competitive.
Yes, you are.
And if you say, I love this work, it's so good, I hate your guts, they love it. That's the best compliment you can give somebody. So then we become colleagues. And I mean this. So that's my motto. Try it. You know, because you're all, not a lot of you are students, but somebody you really, you're jealous of them because they're so good at something, go tell them how good they are. And all of a sudden you don't hate them anymore.
Oh,
Isn't that true,
radical
though?
honesty, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, I make a point of it, and I tell that whenever I speak, go tell people that you're jealous of how good they are. And if they're asshole people, you don't have to be their friend.
No, but you've still...
Yeah, you've got your jealousy.
Yeah.
You get rid of, you don't want that. That'll eat you alive.
Yeah, I remember hearing you speak for the first time, and I was like, wow.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. You are so good at everything you do.
Oh, you're so
You are.
You are. You're a really good model.
It's intimidating and inspiring, and yeah, I hear you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What about, do you have a personal anecdote to finish us off?
I was trying to think about it, but I think my sort of journey through feminism or feminist thought has been just that. It's a continuous evolution. And I suppose like some really seminal, no pun intended, but seminal moments in this journey have been my first protest in high school, going to the abortion marches, and I guess that was 1999 or 2000, I can't remember now, because I grew up in DC, and it was easy to do. And then reading Bell Hooks' first 5 books, also in high school. And then at a certain point when we did Abortion is Normal, having a sort of pivotal moment as a curator, understanding that it was no longer my interest or purpose to try and convince people of the validity of reproductive freedoms or reproductive freedom access to reproductive health care, but that it was really more about building community and making sure that other people in community were seen and heard and held together, whether or not we're in physical proximity to one another. And then I think most recently it's been sort of a reaffirmation of that, convincing myself and the people around me that we don't need to actually convince other people of the validity of our existences. And talking to people on the road and hearing their stories about experiences with traveling out of state for an abortion or to get trans health care, and thinking about resilience and the efforts we make in community and as community to support each other in like realizing who we actually are and affirming that. And so those have been sort of like pivotal moments for me over the past, I guess, I would say 10, but it's really like 20 years.
And hearing you say that is truly an inspiration entering the next 4 years, for me right now. It's an approach of, not to sound cheesy, but abundance, being in community and understanding that it's celebrating that, lifting that up within our groups rather than constantly pushing back and trying.
You can't change people.
Yes,
Yeah, I think my feminist attitude now is if you don't like it, you can go fuck yourself.
Yes. I love it. I've always had that attitude. I think that's...
You're like, on that note.
Yeah, on that note. No, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up. Unless there's anything else, I think we have some audience questions, but Thank you, Marilyn and Jasmine,
Thank
so
you, Emily.
much for being here.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question?
Yeah.
We can't see.
I'm coming.
Right here.
Hello. Oh,
Hello.
wow, that's loud. There's a question specifically for Jasmine. Well, I help work on body freedom for everybody with you. I guess my question for you is, as you were going through, especially the middle America and those states, as the election was getting closer and these conversations happening about body freedom, about abortion, about all of these rights that were in jeopardy, I guess, how was that for you? What were those conversations like? What were people speaking about, especially with, each state had a specific rotation of work. So then how was that for you? What were the conversations? And yeah, that was my one.
Yeah, but before I answer that, can you just share with everyone all of the amazing, maybe not all because you did a lot, but what you did with us over the summer, because it was really integral to everything that's happened since then.
Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Tell everyone who you are.
Oh, yeah, hi, my name's Faudy Estevez. I'm a purchase student. I'm senior this year. And yeah, this summer I had the lovely opportunity of working at Project for Empty Space in their New York location and helping plan and work and organize a lot of the events, a lot of the planning for the eventual truck. I helped pick up work. I was able to set up an interactive space where every day somebody came in and kind of voted. It was really interesting. I kind of voted on what they believed in, on what they felt about abortion rights, how they felt about gender affirming care, how they felt about, and it was interesting to see, different kinds of people join in. And we always posted anonymously, but it was always posting the votes on the wall, and it was interesting to see it grow and get bigger as eventually the box truck eventually left. And yeah, it was great working with Jasmine. She's a great boss. It was interesting. My first time. It was also a great opportunity for me as about to graduate and leave as an artist. It was a great opportunity for me to kind of get that experience of what it's like working in a space like this, especially in a tumultuous time of everything going on, especially in the last week. But it was interesting to work with them and have a bunch of perspectives, and it was a great time.
This was at the headquarters?
Yes.
Okay.
We could not have done it without you. And to answer your question, it has been really eye-opening. Really, I think I can't articulate enough how pleasantly surprised I have been by people's reaction to the truck and the work in the truck. I think all of the interactions, they have been very positive, but some of them have been very hard. People, I'll share sort of anecdotally, there have been a lot of tears on my behalf, crying at strangers, probably ugly crying a lot, because people come with stories that they have held with them, often because of shame. They didn't share them either with anyone or a lot of people, and then they come and share it with a complete stranger. But for them, they've sort of internalized it and often speak in a very kind of candid or matter-of-fact way. But for me, hearing some of them is really difficult. I've met abortion providers and doctors, one in New York who actually said that she's a product of rape, but she's also an abortion provider, and was working in a hospital when the New York bombings happened. I met people at the Emma Goldman Clinic in Iowa City who told me what it was like to be, and these are people who have, the director there has been the director since 1973 when they opened, and has sort of, she told me what the experience has been like and how there's been such a drastic shift towards conservatism in Iowa, but not in Iowa City. And she told me what it was like to have to turn people away when they enacted the 6-week abortion ban. And most people don't know that they're pregnant until after 6 weeks. So it's been really, I think, invigorating in some ways, very emotionally heavy, but thus far, nothing that has told me that this is unsafe or it's not worth doing this work. We'll see what happens in Florida.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I know you touched on it earlier about intersectionality, specifically between gender affirming care and reproductive rights, but I know that you mentioned a lot of other issues that you believe in. How do you deal with representing all the, every issue connects to each other, the intersectionality between every single social issue, and how do you balance the artwork so that you don't have maybe too much representing one issue or not enough of another? Just to hear about how you go about that.
Sure. With the truck?
With the truck or just any
in general?
exhibition that you guys have been a part of.
Marilyn, you wanna take a stab?
Yeah, I don't think we can't do that. You can't even say, well, these are good, but you got to think of. I mean, whenever we take on anything, we think we're doing something positive, and if there's roadblocks, we figure out ways around them, But if I think we're, Gloria Steinem said she's a hopeaholic. And I think that we are operating under that. We're hopeaholics.
I think, since I'm not a maker, part of the reason that there's so many artists participating in this specific project, but I think my preference as a curator is generally to do group shows, because I think it is important to find as many ways of intersecting in nuance without being reductive, if that makes sense. But for this project specifically, I don't know if you can go to the image of the inside of the truck. But here. So this wall that you see here is the one that changes at every stop, and it's actually very challenging to do it every day, but I try and pick works from the 120 artists that are participating that can reflect, to as much of an extent as I can, various intersections that are coming together, again, without feeling like I'm just ticking boxes of representation. But it is a challenge, especially when you're in places that have very regionally specific issues. But yeah, I think that's the gift of having a lot of material to work with, is you can kind of fill in those spaces as you want to. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. One last question? Yeah.
With that in mind, hi, my name is Caroline. With that in mind, how did you create New York's exhibit? What issues were you thinking about? What regional issues you were thinking about when you were setting up the New York exhibit in the truck?
That's a great question. So New York was an interesting one. We were here for 7 days, and New York is interesting because most people and many of the issues that are happening in New York are not from native New Yorkers. And so it actually, in my mind, is kind of a reflection of the amalgamation of what's happening around us, with the exception that we have a lot more access to certain types of care and healthcare that we do in other states. And so those hangs were really, I think, centered in the fact that we have very particular freedoms here that we say we don't have in Texas. While also, I think, and again, noting that this show is rooted in an idea of joy, making sure that the artists who are living in New York who are in the show were shown during that time, because their work is actually quite specific, for the most part, to what's happening in the New York area. And I guess I should mention next year, this year we were just in Manhattan because of our tour schedule, but next year we're planning on going in other regions. So we'll be upstate, we'll be going up to Massachusetts, we'll be going down to Philadelphia. And so our hope is that we actually, more artists, if there are any artists in the room who are doing work around these particular topics, we'll be able to include more artists as we meet them along the way.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was an amazing talk. Thank you, Emily, Jasmine, and Marilyn.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
I want to invite everyone into the lobby. Also, we have a small reception this evening. Have a wonderful night, and thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.